The Department of Justice is often described as the country's premier law enforcement institution, the entity that guards the boundary between the state and the rule of law. Yet in reality, it functions more like a living ecosystem, porous, interdependent, and sensitive to pressures inside and outside its walls. Turbulence in one corner rarely remains contained. It radiates across the institution's internal culture, its interactions with the judiciary, its posture towards states and civil society, and its standing with the public. In time, the pressures that escape the building find their way back, reshaping the very institution that produced them. In recent years, and especially in recent months, controversies surrounding appointments, investigations, internal turmoil, and public threats have exposed just how tightly connected those systems are. What appear, in isolation, to be discrete episodes become, when examined together, a set of mutually reinforcing cycles. Leadership decisions influence case selection. Case selection alters internal norms. Shifting norms reshape how courts, states, and citizens respond. Those responses then chart the course of the department's next actions. The ecosystem responds, adapts, and often intensifies. What follows is an exploration of those cycles, each one a kind of institutional echo, and the way upheaval at the DOJ reverberates outward, only to circle back and alter the institution itself. To understand the current moment, it helps to begin with the triangle at the heart of the DOJ leadership, case selection, and institutional norms. These three elements interact with a fluidity that is easy to overlook, yet they form the foundation on which the department's authority rests. Recent disputes have made the relevance of this triangle unmistakable. The appointment of Lindsay Halligan as the interim United States Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, for example, has become a flashpoint. Former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James have challenged the legality of her appointment, arguing that if the appointment itself cannot withstand scrutiny, neither can the indictments her office brought against them. Their claim rests on a suspicion that the appointment was engineered to pursue specific politically tinged prosecutions, a suspicion echoed by reporting that the Trump-influenced DOJ has increasingly pursued actions aimed at political opponents. In an institution like the DOJ, the effects of such an appointment extend well beyond a single case. Line prosecutors observe the kinds of cases that rise to prominence and the kinds that mysteriously fall away. Internal review bodies sense the temperature. How far can they push? How much skepticism is permissible? Where does the risk lie? Gradually, the professional compass tilts. The neutral equilibrium that once guided career attorneys bends toward a new understanding of what is expected, tolerated, or rewarded. As norms erode, it becomes easier, almost natural, for leadership to shape case selection in more explicitly political ways. Each shift generates the next. A politicized leadership team influences prosecutorial priorities. Those priorities unsettle or suppress internal independence. Weakened independence, in turn, reduces resistance to further politicization. The loop begins to sustain itself, requiring very little additional energy to continue turning. Just outside the DOJ's walls sits a second institution that reacts to prosecutorial decisions with powerful consequences: the federal judiciary. Courts are not merely legal venues. They are interpretive centers that signal, through their decisions and their tone, how they understand the Justice Department's conduct. In the cases involving Halligan's appointment, the courts have stepped into precisely this role. Judges have been asked to examine whether the appointment itself stands on solid legal ground, and if it does not, whether the indictments issued under her authority should be voided. That inquiry is more than a procedural check. It implicitly examines the motivations and the legitimacy of the department's actions. Elsewhere, scholars and commentators have noted the judiciary's increasing discomfort with what they view as partisan prosecutions, a trend that intensifies the scrutiny applied to high-profile cases. Judicial reactions quickly spill into the public sphere. A strongly worded opinion questioning the validity of an appointment becomes grist for media analysis, partisan commentary, and ideological interpretation. For some, it confirms that the DOJ has veered into political territory. For others, it supports the belief that the courts themselves have become political actors. These reactions then feed back into the DOJ's internal calculus. If leadership concludes that legitimacy is already fractured, that critics will see political motive no matter what, the incentive to restrain controversial actions weakens. A judicial rebuke may not halt a questionable prosecution. It may encourage more of them. Each courtroom battle becomes part of a larger war over narrative and perception, reinforcing the cycle of conflict between the DOJ and the judiciary. While the courts respond from the outside, another transformation unfolds within the DOJ itself. Personnel decisions, especially those involving high-ranking career officials, carry consequences that far exceed their immediate administrative justifications. When firings, forced resignations, or administrative leaves disproportionately affect individuals perceived as insufficiently aligned with leadership priorities, the message to the rest of the workforce is unmistakable. Recent reports describing the sidelining of senior antitrust officials and the removal of career prosecutors from high-profile offices have triggered concerns within the department. These moves are rarely presented as political purges, yet their effects mirror what such purges accomplish. Career prosecutors, those who carry the institutional memory and ensure continuity, absorb the lesson. Risk-taking becomes hazardous. Open disagreement becomes career-limiting. The incentive to avoid conflict grows stronger than the incentive to defend traditional norms. As dissent diminishes, the composition of the workforce changes, not always through mass dismissal, but through the quieter forces of attrition, self-selection, and compliance. Over time, decision-making becomes concentrated within a smaller circle of trusted loyalists. Complex cases, once handled by teams balancing legal skill and internal critique, now move along narrower channels. The system loses both its internal checks and its internal diversity, making it more vulnerable to manipulation from above. Beyond internal decisions and judicial reactions, the Department of Justice's role in the country's electoral system forms another critical frontier for understanding institutional turbulence. No domain better illustrates the dangers of politicized enforcement than elections, where even the perception of partiality can reverberate through the entire system. The department's recent decision to examine the handling of protests at a Turning Point USA event at UC Berkeley illustrates how even non-electoral investigations can carry political weight. At the same time, prominent Republicans have accused the DOJ of overreach for actions taken in past investigations involving senators' communications. These disputes do not occur in a vacuum. State officials and political actors interpret each inquiry in light of broader narratives about fairness, legitimacy, and partisan advantage. The result is a feedback chain. States that view DOJ involvement as aligned with their interests amplify the department's authority. States that view it as adversarial distrust its motives and resist cooperation. These responses shape the next election cycle, influencing everything from voter roll management to the willingness of state officials to certify results without litigation. Each contested election deepens the expectation that the DOJ will intervene, and each intervention reinforces the polarization surrounding its role. What begins as a series of discrete investigations slowly evolves into a pattern of escalating engagement. The DOJ becomes a central player in electoral disputes, not because it seeks the role, but because each cycle pushes the institution further into the fray. The Department of Justice's decisions also ripple outward into civil society and the private sector. Universities, advocacy organizations, philanthropies and corporations all monitor the department's signals, often with far more attention than is publicly acknowledged. A single high-profile investigation can alter an organization's risk calculations for years. Recent federal scrutiny of protests and campus activity has done exactly this. Universities and student groups now operate under an awareness that certain types of events or speech might attract federal attention, depending on their ideological associations. Corporations, too, adjust their compliance posture depending on what they perceive as the department's enforcement priorities. Philanthropies and NGOs that align with causes viewed unfavorably by current leadership may curtail their programming, reduce public visibility, or take steps to avoid becoming enforcement targets. These adjustments quietly reshape the ecosystem of actors capable of challenging the Department of Justice. As watchdog groups weaken or retreat, the number of institutions willing to litigate against questionable actions diminishes. The enforcement environment becomes less adversarial and more malleable. This, in turn, encourages the department to pursue more aggressive or selective actions, knowing that resistance is likely to be fragmented or muted. The cycle feeds on itself. Targeted enforcement influences civic behavior, which reduces institutional friction, which emboldens further selective enforcement. Perhaps the most disturbing trend in the Department of Justice's recent environment involves the rise of threats and violence directed at its officials. When an individual vandalized the office of acting U.S. Attorney Alina Habba in New Jersey, the incident underscored a growing reality. Department of Justice officials have increasingly become targets in the broader culture war. These threats force the department to adopt a guarded posture. Offices increase security. Public appearances become rare. Open community engagement diminishes. Officials who once spoke regularly at civic events or public forums now think carefully before appearing in environments that could expose them to hostility. As the department retreats from the public sphere, the space is filled by partisan narratives unhindered by direct institutional visibility. For many Americans, the Department of Justice becomes not a familiar civic presence, but an abstraction defined by political figures and media outlets. The absence of direct engagement fuels misinformation, which in turn emboldens those inclined to threaten or attack public officials. The department's increasing isolation becomes both a response to and a catalyst for further radicalization. This cycle, too, becomes self-reinforcing. Threats lead to seclusion. Seclusion magnifies misinformation. Misinformation produces more threats. Taken individually, these developments, questioned appointments, judicial conflict, internal purges, election entanglements, civil society chilling and rising threats, each present troubling dynamics. But their true significance emerges only when viewed together. Each domain amplifies the others. Purges that weaken internal dissent make it easier for leadership to pursue politically charged prosecutions. Those prosecutions invite judicial skepticism that feeds narratives of institutional warfare, which leadership then uses to justify further internal crackdowns. Election-related investigations intensify polarization among states, generating more litigation and drawing the department deeper into political combat. As civil society actors retreat, fewer independent organizations remain capable of challenging questionable actions, lowering the guardrails that might otherwise slow institutional drift. Meanwhile, threats against officials push the Department of Justice further from public life, allowing extreme narratives to harden which increases hostility toward the agency. This is not a single feedback loop, but a constellation of them, each one reinforcing and accelerating the others. The Department of Justice becomes both the center of gravity and the unwitting participant in a series of self-amplifying cycles that shape the wider institutional landscape. Feedback cycles of this magnitude do not unwind on their own. Restoring stability requires external friction, judicial clarity, legislative constraints, revitalized civic capacity, as well as internal renewal. The judiciary can slow the cycle by enforcing clear doctrines around appointment validity and selective prosecution. Legislatures can reinforce protections for career officials and inspectors general, ensuring that internal dissent does not come with undue personal cost. Civil society institutions can rebuild their capacity to monitor, litigate, and publicize concerns about politicized enforcement. And within the department itself, career development structures can reward integrity rather than conformity, ensuring that the next generation of prosecutors retains a sense of professional independence. And yet, the most crucial shift may be cultural. When rhetoric frames federal law enforcement as a partisan weapon, every cycle accelerates. Resisting that framing within political leadership, within media discourse, and within the department's own communications, offers one of the few ways to slow the machinery of escalation. In an ecosystem as interconnected as the Department of Justice, the danger is seldom a single act of overreach. It is the way each action, taken together, produces a wider cascade of institutional distortions. The cycles examined here show how easily turbulence at the Department of Justice can become self-sustaining. Restoring equilibrium will not be simple, but the first step is recognizing the interconnected loops through which the institution now moves. Loops that, if left unaddressed, threaten not only the department, but the rule of law structure upon which the country depends.